Well, thank you so much, Charlie, for the beautiful introduction there. If you guys see me writhing around uncomfortably, it's because I'm covered in spines. Again, I don't belong here, but I'm trying to make do with what we've got. So if I itch, let me itch. So of course, my talk is aptly titled, "There's no place like home," and I don't mean that affectionately. I just really hate north. Anywhere north is not a place I want to be. So I'll give you my kind of dismal perspective on falconry in Canada, if you'll bear with me. So, as Charlie mentioned, my name is Neil Balchan. I'll just give you a brief rundown on who I am. So I'm about 6 feet tall, I've got brown eyes, I'm incredibly handsome, and I have a great sense of humor. So this is what I tend to look like on most days. You can typically find me either poking a venomous snake or flying my birds of prey. So I joke about my 9 to 5 being the snakes, and then after hours I'm out killing stuff with a hawk. So that's a little bit about me, and that just gives you an intro of who I am. So I'll see if I can do this without killing the light here. All right, so what is Canadian falconry? And that sounds like a stupid question, but it's not. So Canadian falconry is just regular falconry, but it's cold. Oh, thank you, perfect. So,
and it has a laser too.
Yeah, beautiful. So we've got really high-end technology. So Canadian falconry, again, is just regular falconry, and I want to emphasize that. It's very cold regular falconry. So let me give my geography lesson here, because I understand not everyone is familiar with Canada. So for all of you folks here, Canada is north of you guys in America. Canada is right up here, this big green guy. And when I talk about Canada, I'm generally referring to Winnipeg or to Manitoba, which is my city and my province. So little red star there indicates Winnipeg. For perspective, we're just north of Minnesota and North Dakota. So think north and then think like way north. That's where we are.
Way further west.
No.
I'm really glad you gave us
That's why I put that in
lesson.
for Jamaica.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So for anyone else who didn't know, I'm right smack dab in the middle there. So that's where Winnipeg is. We're not further west. And sure, it's cold, yada yada. He's just dramatic. Look at this. No one wants to deal with this. So in the months aren't really well labeled here, but this is our January average. So our January average temperature is minus 18 degrees Celsius. Don't have a calculator on me. Yeah. So in Fahrenheit, that's a little bit colder. And again, this is an average, right? So we're going to have days that are minus 40 with the wind chill. And if you are hardcore, you go out and hawk, because what else do you do, right? So again, very cold. Hope I've clarified that enough. If you need to hear cold again, I will be happy to blabber on that. So one more thing that I really don't like about Canada is our community. And I'm not talking our everyday community. We're all very friendly people. We do the high fives and the maple syrup and the thank you, I'm sorry type of thing. But the one thing we don't really do well in is our falconry community. So this logo right here is that of the Manitoba Falconers Association. And I think that logo dates back to like 1984. And the reason for that is because we formed a club to legalize falconry, and then we decided that we all hate each other and we killed the club. So don't be like Manitoba, okay? The 4 of us in Manitoba don't really talk, and that's why. So, you know, if you ever talk to a Manitoban, tell them to be a little friendlier. But that's my take on the Manitoba club situation. All right, so I've crapped on Canada enough. Let's try to be a little bit more positive. That went the wrong way. All right, that's my bio for anybody who didn't see it. It's like Deborah in the back. Just read Deborah. I'm incredibly handsome. Okay, remember that. That was for Deborah. Okay, we're really going back on this talk. All right. Hi, I'm Neil. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
He's handsome, but so, technologically.
I'm not. Thank you for that. Yeah. So let's talk about our quarry situation, right? The U.S., you guys don't really know it, but you guys are a sea of quarry. You have game everywhere. And a little naive Canadian like me comes here and his eyes water because there's so much game. But back north, we don't have that. So we've got game, we don't have it in any abundance. So I don't need to give you guys an animal lesson here. You're all a little bit older than you would be to need an animal lesson. But to begin with, we've got the eastern cottontail, really common, fluffy backyard critter. Everybody hunts them. We've got the American red squirrel. Not really catchable in the falconry context. Could probably do an accipiter or a red tail if you really tried. The gray squirrel, so our classic squirrel hawking, but I'll tell you again about how we feel about doing it. And then the white-tailed jackrabbit, and this is kind of the queen of the north. And this is my bread and butter here. So that's the only good thing about Manitoba, and I'll just emphasize that now. That is the only good thing, so remember that and stick to it. All right, I'm going back again. I think I just broke this. All right, so as long as the laser works, it's fine. I think the whole thing is broken now, so if we can...
Oh, you got an icon pop up or
Oh,
something.
shoot, okay. I bet Deborah knew how to do this. All right,
Should be.
are we? Yeah, we're back.
No.
All right, So given what we have for Corey, right, notice I didn't touch upon small birds, because I found out the hard way we don't have small birds in the winter. That's why my imprint goose hawk became a face grabber. So that's my excuse, it's yours. Anyway, trapping. So let's move on to trapping. A couple people talked about trapping. We do have trapping in Manitoba. You hear people from Quebec talk a lot about trapping because they're particularly loud and active online. They're one of the only Canadian provinces that doesn't have trapping. So when you see a screaming imprint bird, just go to Eastern Canada. We tend to do it right in Western and Central Canada, so we do have trapping. And given the game situation I mentioned previously, the only reasonable option here is going to be a passage red-tail. And I'll touch on a couple other birds you could probably get by with. But if you want to do it right, you're probably going to do it this way. So I've been to Arizona earlier in the fall around Thanksgiving time, and I'm told you guys have like a passage red-tail deficit down here on some years. I might be completely making that up, but I think I'm probably accurate. So we have the opposite problem in Manitoba. We just have too many darn birds. So my record for a morning's trapping has been 11 passage hawks that hit the trap, were pulled off the trap and released. And of course we get to cherry pick. So we get big birds. I mean, this was a 1,600 gram female.
Wow.
That was day one of my 2016 trapping season maybe. So I trapped for like 3 hours and called it quits. That was a small male, and then this is a female as well. So we fall right on the flyway, and we're up north, so birds move through pretty quickly. So we get a quick burst of activity, really easy pickings for a good bird, and then it wanes down really, really quickly, and you kind of have to make do with what you have. Fortunately, these are eastern birds. I'm finding out very quickly that the birds in Colorado don't play well all the time, per se, but I've never had an issue with the Manitoban bird. So let's talk about the quarry and actually hunting the quarry. So quarry number one, kind of the give me catch, is your eastern cottontail. So this is a passage male red-tail Manitoba bird on an eastern cottontail. So really easy quarry. I mean, somebody without arms and legs could probably just put their red tail up and let it all happen. But the caveat is that this kind of hawking is only valid before snow cover. I can see my popularity has increased here. This type of hawking is only valid without snow cover. Yeah. So in Canada, cottontails are actually a challenging quarry. And everyone can finger point at Jeff Fincher and say cottontails are fine if you're hunting in Canada. Because Jeff hates bunnies. But again, in Manitoba, if you can catch a cottontail, you're doing okay. So this is great, this is all happy, but the minute snowfall comes down and you have a foot of snow, you're probably not going to see a cottontail again until melt. So if you want to try to say that again?
What happens to them?
They all go subterranean, yeah. So even with dogs, I mean, I've gone hunting with a good dog and they will not push a cottontail up.
So are they like kind of hibernating or something?
No, so they're active, but it's all under the snow.
Just staying.
Yeah, so if you could train like a great gray owl or something to catch them, then you might do okay. But with any like visual bird, you're never going to catch a cottontail in the winter.
How much snow is usually going to be on the ground?
About 4 feet, yeah. So it's about thigh height. So again, if your dog was a bear, maybe he could dig it out. But like a normal pointer isn't really going to get a cottontail out. So not easy hawking in Canada. Just want to really emphasize that we work hard. So another one, the eastern gray squirrel, right? So we touched on this earlier. Again, these guys are good until the deep freeze. So in the north, our deep freeze is -40. Good luck getting a squirrel out of his cozy little fireplace at -40. He's never coming out of there unless you burn the tree down, which isn't too sporting. So we have, in addition to that, we have what I call low budget squirrel hawking. So we don't have these beautiful tall hardwoods and big lush foliage or anything like that. We have stunted oak trees. The squirrel is like 15 feet above your head at times. So it's very much a game of throwing rocks and being kind of a little primitive and trying to get your squirrel caught. So we can squirrel hawk in Canada. We can absolutely squirrel hawk in Canada. Again, Quebec, a couple of eastern provinces are weird with their squirrels. They really like them. But in Manitoba, squirrels are fair game. They're just not always accessible or sporting depending on how you're doing it. So keep that in mind. All right. And then the creme de la creme, this is my claim to fame, so please stroke my ego a little bit on this one. The white-tailed jackrabbit. So these guys are my favorite. They're a reliable quarry, and they're very difficult to catch. We have these all year round, and they change in color from gray in the warm months to yellow, or not yellow, to white in the winter. They would be yellow if they've peed on themselves, so that will turn them yellow. I've turned quite a few yellow. So they start white, but after you catch them, they get a yellow tinge. But we don't worry about that. So the white-tailed jackrabbit, go ahead.
Why did they get a yellow tinge?
Because they pee all over themselves when you squeeze them to death. Yeah, you find that out the hard way if you catch them. Yeah. So the white-tailed jackrabbit. The what? Jaundice? Yeah, late onset jaundice. Yeah, you get that. It's a medical condition. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but I pretend well. Cool quarry. But these are eagle quarry. We have an eagle falconer right here. How many of you caught eagle falconer? One. Yes. All right. I will show you several pictures.
Say it.
There you go. So these are really eagle quarry, right? To do them well, you could probably do them with a really big goshawk reliably. I know Dave Canellis would agree with me on that one. But a passage female redtail is a great bird for white-tailed jackrabbits if you're hardcore enough. So again, issues here, right? 4 foot deep snowpack. That's snow up to here. When your bird binds a white-tailed jack like 300 meters out, I don't know what that is in American, many yards out, a mile, half a mile out, I don't know. You've got to now make in through 4 feet of snowpack, right? And you're pulling muscles, like I'm not the fittest guy, I don't do the parkour or the CrossFit or anything. But can you imagine like this hunk of man over here running through 4 feet of snow? Neither can I, that's why I don't bring them all to bag, right? So that's a really big issue. And that's where you're gonna lose the bulk of your jacks. If you look at the back of this guy as well, you can see there's a couple of patches of missing fur. Jacks shed fur like a ripped open pillow. And this is a horrible, horrible thing for you as a falconer. It's probably great for the jack, but a bird will often just feather or fur, I guess, a jackrabbit to the point where it can't even get its feet through the winter coat. So this is my bragging rights now. I'll just keep going through pictures. So this is how Lauren McGowan does her jackrabbit falconry. So her bird will hustle with it on the ground and she'll get a clump of fur. I'm just kidding. I'm sure she's a great falconer. It's fine, leave her alone, guys. Everyone don't pick on her. But this would be a typical like winter scene, right? So we've got this is probably closer to 3 or maybe even 2 feet of snowpack here. And it kind of illustrates the fight that these jacks are putting on and kind of the brilliance and beauty of these kind of flights. So your jack is running for dear life. Your red tail is struggling to hold on. And you get these beautiful wing imprints, foot imprints, occasionally blood from one party or the other, hopefully not your bird. And then every now and then you'll end up with a clump of fur. And as much as we want, we can't put these all together to make one kill. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But it still feels good when you get part of the jack. You get a souvenir. So there's generally how a chase is going to go in failure. But every now and then, things line up. And we're on. Okay. And then you get success. Yes, and you've done well. So here's a jack. This will be a smaller jack, maybe 7 or 8 pounds, which is like an average blacktail size. And this was one that a bird had caught way out, and I panted in and ran up on it. This is another similarly sized jack. You can notice there's a bit of cover in the back. So these animals aren't found in sage flats or grass like a typical jack is, at least in Canada. They tend to prefer willow thickets and areas that you might associate with the cottontail especially there.
Anything off the fist or from perches?
So both. So again, really versatile. A bird can actually catch these off the ground. I've had a red leap off the ground and catch up with a jack. You can fly off the fist, you can fly from a perch, you can use a T-perch if you're so inclined. Don't do that, but you could if you wanted to. So really so really any style of flight will work with jackrabbits, provided you've got a fit bird. And these guys get big, so one more bragging page here, there we go. So this is my record. This guy was 13 and a bit, so a hair under 14 pounds. A hair under 14 pounds. So that's a big jack, right? And this red tail is probably in the neighborhood of 14 or 1500 grams. So not a huge bird. And then here's an early season jack as well. This critter is in transitional pelage, so he's got a bit of gray on the top and a bit of white on the bottom. So they're a really fun critter to hunt. They are a cool thing to hunt for sure. But still not enough motivation to get me to move back up north. So please don't encourage me. All right, so what are challenges with Canadian falconry? Well, there's a lot of them. So on most January days, this will be me. I kind of look like that. And that challenge is temperature.
Yeah.
So, taller, longer. I'm named Haggle, Charlie. Yeah. No. So this is me. I think darker might have been on this. It's fine. So this is me, a couple shades lighter. It's winter. There's not a lot of sun. It's fine. We all know who said that. Don't worry about it. But yeah, so temperatures are going to be a huge challenge, right? And I can list a handful of people who have killed birds just due to winter lows. So if you're going to house a bird outdoors in the winter, totally doable. Not a bad idea since you'll have an acclimated bird to your weather. But you can't keep that sucker at flying weight. I know people who keep birds at flying weight. A blizzard will come through, and their bird is hanging from a perch in the morning completely dead. And that's probably not a fun thing to have. So if you're going to keep your bird outside, you want to keep it fat, in the winter at least. With that said, in the winter, I can fly 200 grams heavy if I'm flying a red-tailed hawk and still take game. So you do have that wiggle room when it's minus 40. The other option would be keep your bird inside. So you have to deal with poop, potentially a yelling spouse or friend or whoever you're living with, but at least your bird will be alive to hunt the next day. So maybe go that route. And then lastly, why use a game bag when you can just use a parka? So I've been hassled a couple times now about not having a vest or a game bag. I'm not from here. I don't belong in this culture. Up north, we just use a parka. They've got big pockets, and you can shove everything in there. So a game bag is a burden to be carrying around in the north. We like our parkas. Another challenge is snow. So you don't have these here, but we get blizzards, and to Arizonans, it may be called a snow haboob. So I'm just trying to get the cross-cultural talk here. So every now and then we will get a snow haboob in Winnipeg, where crazy snow will come through, and it's not like sand, you don't have to close your eyes or anything, but it is very cold and very windy. So you'd probably be an idiot to hunt in the middle of a blizzard. If you want to do it, you're welcome to. But then the byproduct of a snow haboob or a blizzard is going to be deep snowpack. And these are days where you can have like even 8 feet of snow in some areas. I've jumped in like a bunch of snow thinking it'd be like 6 inches, and then I get buried in there and have to dig myself out. So that's a genuine worry when you are hawking post-blizzard. So something to keep in mind. All right, and then the last challenge, and this is a big one throughout Canada, at least as far as I know, is game abundance. So really, you just have to make do with what you have. Got a lot of game in the early season, and a lot of game in the late season in the spring. But in the mid-season, there's not really much. So you have a couple of options. You could potentially take a mid-season hiatus, put your bird up. These will be the coldest months as well, so why bother keeping it at flying weight if you're not going to fly it actively? And then another option that I'm not necessarily a huge proponent of are baggies or lure pulls, which make a little bit more sense. But in the winter, if you're not able to keep the routine of going out to hunt and kill, baggies are a legitimate way to reinforce that. With that said, I'm not talking a Coturnix quail thrown in the air for a red tail with poor plumage, who is probably an imprint. But for a fit hunting bird whose kind of head is in the game, it isn't hurtful to use a pigeon occasionally just to solidify that hunting relationship. Lure pulls also work well, and they're great fitness training and kind of behavioral training for jackrabbit flights. So I rely extensively on those when it does get really, really cold. And that's just a stuffed bunny. Please don't use those as a lure, although you probably could if you wanted to. All right, so my closing thoughts on this. Falconry up north is not for everybody, and I really hope I've made that clear with my self-hate and how much I've loathed Manitoba. So it's not for everybody, it's for very few. And I've only touched on red tails because that's really what's readily available to us up there. We do have goshawk take, but again, the game kind of prohibits that. Birds that would work really well, in my opinion, are golden eagles. So if we could start a GoFundMe for one eagle falconer maybe to come up and do some preliminary eagle work, we could open up golden eagle take potentially, because we live in jackrabbit paradise and it's darn cold. So a golden eagle would be an awesome bird in central Canada. Another potential, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have the legality to fly eagles up there, or?
Yeah, so it's variable by province.
Take?
Yeah, so we don't have take anywhere. The legality to fly is variable by province. Where I am, we're off limits completely. So propagation could probably be approved, but for hunting purposes, I don't think we would have access in any way. So eagles are pretty much a no throughout Canada. There are a couple places that allow them. Falcons. So we're really weird with our peregrines. You guys have been on the receiving end of our stinginess with the tundra birds, so I apologize for that on behalf of my government. But if we could allow falcon take, we could potentially have very good hawking in the early season. So you think about Saskatchewan and the great meets that they have out there. Manitoba could emulate that, but the people we have kind of in power right now aren't too crazy about falcons. So that would be another potential avenue that I think could be good. And then finally, I really like red tails. They're a good all-around bird. We need to kind of stop pooping on red tails and actually enjoy them for what they are, which is really good predatory game hawks. So I like them. And then lastly, keep calm and move south is kind of the motto that I work with. So if you can't fix what you got, just throw it away and pretend it never happened. That's how I like to do it. So I'm now living in Colorado, and I do hope to eventually make the move and come further south. So if anyone has like a vacancy around here and needs somebody, call me, because I would love to move down here. But anyway, that's all I've got for my brief primer. I thank you, and I would be happy to take any questions.
So, you know, the mid-season hiatus you talked
Yeah.
about, do you have the ability to cross the U.S. border with birds to come south and hunt during the winter time?
Yeah, so not readily, unfortunately. It is doable. The lag time is about a month or a month and a half with all the paperwork, and you're usually at a couple hundred.
Do we know if NAPA is working on streamlining? I know there's been talk about a
Yeah.
passport, but I'm kind of out of the loop on that. Do we?
Yeah, so I think they had implemented a bird passport deal for the Canadian meat that had happened recently. I didn't hear what how that ended up ultimately, but I don't think NAFA has any long-term plans to implement anything like that.
I think what
If
they
anyone
did
knows
is they
them,
came up with kind of a group passport for
Yeah.
the birds traveling for that meet, but that was like a one-time
one-time
thing.
deal. Yeah.
There's
Not
no
something
quarantine
they're gonna
period?
keep going.
I'm not too sure. Jamaica might know more about it. Was there a quarantine period for that one-time passport?
That I don't
Yeah.
know, but it was pretty easy, so I kind of doubt it.
Right. Yeah. So that would be great. I mean, there's not a ton of us up there flying birds compared to what you have down here. So there probably isn't a huge push for it. But if anyone wants to get moving on that, I would thumbs up you for sure. So,
I would think it'd be a way for Canadian falconers to be able to come down and continue to fly through the winter when it just gets too nuts up there to do it.
And attendance at meets and things like that, right? It's it's not stuff to leave it behind.
And especially down here we're used to the snowbirds coming from all over the country to Arizona, and we welcome Canadian falconers as well. So
Yeah, and
they just come a little farther. That's all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So your Canadian winters look like our summers. I mean, sorry.
Yes, but the
backwards.
sand and snow, right? We
Right.
flipped it.
Your
Yeah.
Canadian summers look like our winters.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
Do you hawk through the winter, through the summer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have hawked through the summer. I flew so we have Haggard take where I am. I flew a Haggard Merlin through the early spring and part of the summer. I also flew
On what?
on incidental takes. So right? So this was meant to be a pigeon hawk. The bird was probably 3 or 4 years old. She wanted nothing to do with the pigeon. So it was a shame that black-eyed or dark-eyed juncos would accidentally ruin every flight. But you gotta catch what you gotta catch. So she did her thing, and we just kind of took her up to fly, and she catch what she catch. Cooper's hawks. So I kind of dabbled on the dark side, on the exhibitor side. Very quickly realized that was not for me. I lost about a pint of blood, and I feared my life every day interacting with that bird. So we moved on from there. But yeah, summer hawking could certainly happen. Prime candidates for that. I know people fly Harris hawks during the summer up in the north, and potentially even red tails and things like that could work.
So
are you
the
molting?
ideal situation is, as a Canadian,
Yeah.
to keep a bird in the south somewhere,
Bingo.
across the border, come down and fly it, have somebody else house it for you while you go up and do your.
Yeah.
So you can have year-round falconry now.
So if anyone wants to open up a boarding facility, there are a lot of wealthy Canadians who do want to fly down here, so you can work on that.
Okay.
So keep it up there. Yeah.
So are you molting during your best hunting season?
No, so you're not putting the bird up for molt, but you are fattening it up and just leaving it alone. So provided you don't manipulate your photo period too much, the bird isn't going to molt. Sorry, I completely misinterpreted your question. You're talking about summer hunting.
Yeah, summer hunting.
Yeah, so with the Cooper's hawk, I reverse molted that bird.
Okay.
So all you have to do is manipulate your photo period, and your
Okay.
bird will molt out in the winter, and then in theory be normal again in the summer.
Wow.
That doesn't always hold true, but in general it can work. So that's one avenue. You can also fly through the molt, which is what I had done with the Merlin.
Yeah.
But you're just a little bit more liberal with your feeding and with your weight management. Yeah.
Did the same in Michigan and Indiana with the coops reverse molt.
Yeah, it seems like a common thing up north. Yeah.
I'd never heard of that.
Wouldn't touch any bird coops anytime soon. So.
So you just have like a timer for a light, basically?
Yeah, you would just run like a 14-hour day during the winter, essentially, with a light. And then once summer photo period hits, they'll stop molting due to the reduced photo period. Yeah.
Are my hares out of season in the summer?
No, so where I am, all rabbits and squirrels and rodents really are vermin. So we're fair game anytime.
So you could hawk them with a red tail.
You could, yeah. You'd be catching a lot of pregnant rabbits, which probably wouldn't be a lot of fun, but you could definitely do that. Yeah.
I wouldn't know because I don't hunt rabbits.
No, right. Yeah, I didn't see you catch a black
Do they
tail
run
rabbit.
slower when they're pregnant?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Never mind. Yeah.
Pregnant squirrels.
Yeah.
Squirrels were always pregnant.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They don't stop. Yeah.
They don't stop.
Yeah. Cool. You go way back? Yeah, yeah.
The photo period.
Uh-huh.
Does the lighting matter? Like,
I don't think it does. So I'm not like a lighting pro or anything like that. I was just running a full spectrum light. This is what I had. But I've been told you can do whatever. Yes. So someone else would probably know more. Yeah, snake lamps work with this, but that's what I used. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, was that you? Yeah.
I just knew that's what you used because that's what you had.
Yeah. Use what you have. That's the message.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions, or have I sufficiently talked you out of moving to Canada?
You have.
I think I've done my job. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out.